Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the SFL Schedule Release Show here on the SFL Network on Twitch TV, presented by APM Music. I am SFL Commissioner Cameron Irvine, and tonight I'm joined by a panel of, well, average attractive gentlemen. Chris Curtis is here with us first. How you doing, Chris?
Speaking of average and attractive, thank you very much for the introduction, Cam. How you doing, sir?
You are more than welcome. I am always happy to assist and compliment. I am doing fine, sir. Max Jackson, owner of the Las Vegas Fury, is here with us. How you doing, Max?
I'm doing good.
Do you also agree that we are of average attraction?
It works for me. We'll find out during the convention, I guess.
Hey, everybody, right now I got my head on my hand and I am asleep, but you can't see me, so suck it. No more memes for me as we get going tonight. Hey, let's welcome in the rookie, the Atlanta quarterback, number 10 in the draft, Marcus Dunhill. How you doing, Marcus?
I'm doing pretty good, although I think I'm below average attraction, so how I got here, I have no idea.
Well, we're regressing. That's not a good start.
Let's through the cracks.
Jack Brown, lead us to the promised land. You have to make up for Marcus. Are you of above average attractiveness?
I don't know. Go ask the girls around my high school. They'll tell you that answer.
Oh, okay.
That's a toss-up. I don't know if that means that they would say yes or they would say no.
Cam, we can all agree we have great
know.
faces for radio.
That's yes, always.
Yeah.
Always. We can always make that promise. Everyone's like, shut up! Who am I playing? Well, we'll find out in just a moment. First, we're going to start with opening night. It's the opening night matchup of the season, and that matchup belongs to the Mexico City Aztecs and the Alaska Storm. It's right after the Hall of Fame ceremony, Friday, July 13th at the SFL Convention at 9 p.m. Central, 10 p.m. Eastern. It's a late one, but it's one worth staying up for. Let's start with you, Curtis. These two teams duked it out in the playoffs. Alaska is raising their championship banner, and for the second straight season, we'll have the last two champions going toe-to-toe on opening night.
Indeed, in Mexico City, of course, opening the season for the second time in a row. Alaska coming off the upset of Tallahassee in that championship game. It was an absolute barn burner, and they have set the standard for themselves. Only they can reach and extend it. We'll see if they can do it.
Max, you want to get your let's go to Jack. Jack, you're going to be participating in this game on the field as a linebacker. Where does Alaska rank in terms of opponents you love to hate?
They rank very high. Of course, this is also more or less the podcast bowl, as everybody involved in this game is on the podcast in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, Ramos and Mighty are on the podcast analysts. I, of course, am the host. And so this is obviously the podcast bowl, and really, to answer your question, they're pretty high up there, along with Tallahassee, maybe even Vancouver, eh?
Well,
Caught me off guard, Jack. Sorry.
I think I know what the girls would say at the high school now. Fail. Absolute fail. He said A, and he's not. Anyway, 71 viewers and dropping here on the schedule release show. Happy to have you guys along. Obviously, you can tell we're very excited here for tonight. I believe Iceman Gervin 44 called the opener earlier today with Mexico City and Alaska. Jack, let's get your thoughts. You're on the Western Conference here quickly before we move to the rest of the Week 1 slate and many other exciting announcements. Mexico City and Alaska are two of the toughest foes in the West. Do you believe these two teams will be your two toughest opponents, or you have your eyes on somebody else this year?
Well, I mean, I would probably agree with you, Cam. Alaska is by far, the big boy of the West now. Especially coming off of that championship run. And, of course, you get the previous two champions, stick them in the same conference, there's going to be blood on the floor.
Max, what do you think?
Well, I think Mexico City is one of those teams that's going to take a few weeks to get adjusted to the West. If they win this game, it'll be because of their defense and the coaching of Ramos is where I'm coming from.
Well, convention weekend is going to be very exciting, and we're going to start with the rookie, Marcus Dunhill. We want to see where Atlanta's going. We want to see where everybody's going in Week 1 and who got saddled with that pesky bye there at the beginning of the season. Hey, you don't get to play convention weekend, but at least you get a week to study up on your next opponent. And more importantly, they don't get to see what you have in store for them. So the Week 1 bye does have its advantages. Without further ado, the Week 1 slate, the SFL Convention Weekend Slate, here on the SFL Schedule Release Show. It all starts with Mexico City and Alaska, and then Saturday, it's 8 games, 4 different doubleheaders throughout the day, plus the Hall of Fame game. And that Hall of Fame game was introduced earlier today. Houston at Queen City. A rematch of the Season 6 championship game will be on Saturday night at 7 o'clock in its own time window. Here are the other opening weekend matchups. Atlanta's at Chicago to kick off the convention's Saturday slate at 12. Kicking off a half an hour later, Dallas is at Oklahoma City. The 2 o'clock hour, Sioux Falls is at Tulsa. San Francisco is at Las Vegas as Max Jackson hosts his former team owner. Well, so does Denver. They host Vancouver in the nightcap at 9:30. The game right before that kicking off is the rematch of the best game of the year as voted on by the SFL community from Season 10. Indianapolis is back in Tallahassee on opening week late Saturday night. Other afternoon kickoffs include London at St. Louis and Baltimore at Carolina. Let's get your thoughts first, Marcus, on the Week 1 slate. First off, let's get your thoughts on Atlanta traveling to Chicago.
Sure, Cam, absolutely. So the last time that Atlanta and Chicago had played was in the Season 9 playoffs. And Chicago beat Atlanta 22-16, knocked us out of the playoffs. So we're definitely coming back for some revenge.
Chris, what do you think about the Week 1 slate? This is really exciting. We got London, St. Louis, Atlanta, Chicago. Those are friends doing battle. Dallas and Oklahoma City, those are it's been a good rivalry over the years. And then you've got the rematches. Not only did these guys leave to go and start their own teams, but now they're also going to get to play their former owner and also meet him for the first time too. It's going to be nuts.
That's going to be a lot of fun. Two matchups that I'm really looking at on this slate. I've got to look at London and St. Louis. London did not have the season last season that they wanted. St. Louis, however, they did come out of the gate strong. They definitely withered a bit towards the end, and I look for them both to have a bounce back year. That said, I think London's going to come out on top on that game. However, the other one that I'm looking at is the obvious. It's the game that I called with Jimmy Stevens last season at in the playoffs, Indy and Tallahassee. Game of the year. Every single play mattered in that game. I expect nothing different when the Red Devils travel to see the Pride in the Pride Rocket 9 on Saturday.
Max, you've had to handle the front office and the on-the-field duties this year now as a team owner. Ryan Moats obviously handled the front office stuff for San Francisco last season. You kind of stepped in when the team needed coaching help. How is that going to feel, having your home opener against a team that you're trying to prove, hey, look at me, coach?
I think it'll be exciting, actually. I think both people will see how much of the playbook he tries to keep in there, or if he's a little worried that I know all the plays now, because let's see what he changes up. I'm excited. I'm looking for. They got new rookies. I feel bad that I had to intercept Gabriel Manning in the Pro Bowl, but I love the kid. So that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, hopefully I don't have to intercept him again, but I don't think Merrick will be as nice.
Well, you're going to get to see him again, and we're going to get to see a lot of exciting matchups this year across the SFL. Last year we had a Saturday night slate that followed the podcast. We had Fan Night, the game of the week, on Sunday night, which, if you're new to the SFL, Fan Night, you actually get to vote for the game you want to see in prime time, that you want to hear the number one broadcast team call, myself and Stephen Mullinex. And that's still going to happen this year, but folks, that is moving to Monday night, because Sunday night is rivalry night in the SFL, and we've got some amazing rivalry games to show off to you tonight. We also have a new Friday Night Lights slate, which is basically all of the best storylines wrapped up into each week of action in the SFL. Both of those primetime slates will be on Twitch. And without further ado, we want to introduce you to the Rivalry Night slate on the SFL Network on Twitch. Rivalry Night is Sunday night. And here's the slate. In Week 2, Tallahassee's at Atlanta. In Week 3, Queen City heads to Baltimore. Week 4, Tulsa's at Houston. Week 5, Las Vegas is at Denver, the Vice Wars, as leaked earlier today. Week 6, the best on the field, Ryan Moats from the NFL, takes the best off the field on the defending champion, the Alaska Storm. Week 7, Oklahoma City's at Sioux Falls. That's part of our Military Appreciation Week. Week 8, Queen City at Atlanta. Week 9, the rematch, Alaska at Mexico City. Week 10, as leaked earlier today, Tallahassee at Carolina. Week 11, Tulsa at Tallahassee. Starting things off in a critical game there late in the season. In Week 12, Battle of the Midwest, Chicago at St. Louis. Start with you, Marcus. What rivalry sticks out to you here? What matchup are you most interested in seeing kind of unfold on the slate?
Sure, thanks, Cam. Taking a look here at this slate, there's a lot of good options here, but I'd probably have to go with Tulsa and Houston in Week 4.
That's the rematch of the Houston winning to Tulsa, and they took it to them. Go ahead, Marcus.
So they met in the Season 10 playoffs. Houston won 44-24. And to my record, the research I did, that's the only time they've played. So I'm likely to see Tulsa trying to come back and take some revenge against Houston for knocking them out of the playoffs.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see. They got to go to Houston this time, and this is a This is a return for Deion Hawkins back to Houston as well. He played running back there for a while. Jack Brown, what piques your interest?
Personally, Cam, I'm looking at that Week 6 game between San Francisco and Alaska. We all remember what happened last season when these two teams first met up. San Francisco went in and shocked the Alaska Storm, and of course handing them their second consecutive loss. That would actually turn out to be their final loss of the season. And then, of course, later on, Mighty came in and absolutely mollywopped the Sharks. I think now, once again, coming in to season 11, that rivalry is not dying down.
All right, so that's the rivalry night slate, but we're not done yet. We've also got the Friday Night Lights slate, and these are all they make your mouth water matchups. These are some fun ones. These are some cross-conference ones. These are ones that we wanted to see on the schedule, so we said, hey, you know what? We're going to make them happen. This is the Friday Night Lights slate on the SFL Network presented by APM Music, and that slate is as follows. In Week 2, New Orleans heads to St. Louis as the Pharaohs' first game will be in St. Louis to take on Aaron Arrington's former team. In Week 3, Chicago is at Vancouver. It's the first time Shan Varner and Andy Hamilton have played each other since they were coordinators together in Carolina. Week 4, Baltimore and Mexico City. An old school rivalry that was leaked earlier today, dating all the way back to the casual adult gamer days. Week 5, Alaska flies all the way to the UK to take on the London Knights. Jet lag for the defending champs. The Knights hoping to pounce and get an upset in Week 5. In Week 6, Dallas heads to Tulsa. That is a new Southern rivalry brewing as they're just a few hours apart. Week 7, Queen City is at Indianapolis. Two powers, one that was in the Central last year, another that was in the East. Now they get to play each other in the same conference for a lot more marbles. Week 8, how about this? Tulsa at Alaska. Two playoff teams from last year, two teams that went a combined 19-5 in the regular season in Season 10. And that one is going to be an exciting one in Week 8. Week 9, Atlanta and Tallahassee, of course. Who can forget the battles that those two have had over the years? Week 10, it's an international contest. Mexico City heads to Vancouver as Canada and Mexico go for bragging rights. Hey, Week 11, Dallas is at Baltimore. The last time that Dallas was at Baltimore, it was the Dallas Roughnecks at the Baltimore Crabs. And Dallas knocked Baltimore out of the playoffs. Baltimore hasn't been back to the playoffs since. And now the Dallas Lobos will be at the Baltimore Vultures, both teams under the same ownership. And in Week 12, Tom Pepper faces his former team as Indianapolis hosts Vancouver, and that's not the only quarterback revenge game that's late in the calendar. We'll hear more about those as we move along. All right, Max, Friday Night Lights. What's the matchup to watch this year?
I'm going to have to go with Week 7, Queen City and Indy. I think both those teams have really been figuring out what they need to do with this new progression system, and I think some of the new players for Indy and some of the new players for Queen City, that's going to be the clash right there. Defensive battle, I could see it being, actually.
All right, how about you, Jack?
Well, there's two, I'd say, right there. Of course, you have Week 4, Baltimore at Mexico City. I myself, since this is only going to be going into my third season in the league, have never seen my Mexico City Aztecs take on a Baltimore team. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And, of course, Week 12, Vancouver at Indy. You know, as you said, it's going to be a revenge game. Tom Pepper is, hosting now his former team after he left them after Season 10, and it's going to be a very interesting matchup right there.
Vancouver, 3 games on the Friday Night Lights slate. Chris, Curtis, whatever. I don't know why I'm calling you Chris tonight. It's really bizarre.
Yeah, it's a little weird, but it's all right. You can call me. Cam, you have license to call me whatever you want. That's fine. Anyway, I'm looking at.
What tickles your fancy, Jumanji?
We're gonna go ahead and leave that statement there. Dallas and Tulsa from Week 6 is who I'm looking at. I'm looking at that because that basically gives me a new edition of the Red River rivalry to take a look at. You have Texas and Oklahoma teams squaring out again, and we haven't really found a rivalry that fits that with the other Oklahoma team and another Texas team yet. So I really, really like this matchup. I think it's going to be the start of something special between the history of these two teams.
All right, well, with Friday Night Lights and rivalry night is Sunday night all cleared up out of the way, we still have one big surprise on top of debuting all the team schedules and going through and analyzing everything every which way. So make sure to stay tuned and keep your ears peeled for that. Is that the expression, ears peeled? I don't know.
I think it's your eyes peeled.
Well, yeah, but I can change it to a different body part. Anyway, it's my show, right, Curtis?
Yeah, we're just living in it.
Yeah, tell me about it. I kind of wish maybe it wasn't my show. This is just too much pressure. All right. Week 1 slate in the books. Now let's see what Week 2 looks like. Here on the SFL schedule release show presented by APM Music. And last I checked, look at that, 81 viewers holding strong. Let's get over 100 as we move through the schedule here. Well, we already talked about it a little bit. The headliner for Week 2 is New Orleans and Aaron Arrington taking on his former team, the St. Louis Gladiators. It's the Pharaohs' first game, and it's the first game for #1 draft pick Xander Gold. It'll be the first time we get to see him, and he'll be in the big Friday Night Lights. Here's the rest of the Week 2 slate. Carolina is at San Francisco Saturday. Jaquise Ulundula goes back to San Francisco to take on his former team. And then the Sunday slate, you got 4 games at 3 o'clock Central. Tulsa at Oklahoma City, the Oklahoma rivalry. Queen City at London, battle for the Queen. Dallas and Houston, the Texas two-step. Denver and Mexico City get it on in Mexico at 3 o'clock. And then the 5 o'clock slate, Alaska's at Vancouver. Big Northwestern blood shed there. It's also Vancouver's home opener. Baltimore's at Indianapolis. That's James Richards taking on his former well, he would be the protege to Tim Johnston. Las Vegas is at Sioux Falls. And then Sunday night, Tallahassee and Atlanta. Chicago is on a bye, Week 2. Marcus, your thoughts on Week 2?
So the thing that comes to mind for Week 2, especially for me being the Atlanta quarterback, is our game against Tallahassee. We split Season 8, we split Season 9. Atlanta knocked Tallahassee out of the playoffs in Season 9, and then we got swept by Tallahassee last season. So as it stands, the series is 4-3 with Tallahassee in the lead, but we're looking to go ahead and take the lead from them.
All right, so Tallahassee, Atlanta is going to be a good one. Curtis, we're looking at those afternoon windows. So many games, so little time. But which one has the potential? Which one's going to be that game that everyone is not going to, or they're going to regret that they missed?
I'm going to go ahead and play a little bit of favoritism here. My Queen City Corsairs going across the pond. I think the game, London, as I mentioned before, they're going to be a better team this season. I really, really do believe that. And and Queen City, and just as a third-party observer, is always a tough game, no matter what the situation is. So London's going to have their hands full, but I think so is Queen City, especially with the travel that they have to deal with. I really, really like that game in the afternoon slot.
All right, Max Jackson, outside of Las Vegas, heading to Sioux Falls. What's on your mind in Week 2?
I think I have to go with Denver going to Mexico City. I think it'll be interesting to see what Ramos cooks up against Jeremy Vega, because they might just have 1 week of film. Like, the Vancouver footage may not be good enough to game plan against what Denver is going to be doing this season. I think that you'll see the Denver team that struggled with player progression last season. I think this season they've got a new quarterback he's been there for a while. He's Josh Miller, I think is his name.
Yeah.
I think this is the game you won't want to miss in Week 2. Actually, this is my big pick.
All right, so Denver, Mexico City out west should be a good one, along with many others. That's your Week 2 slate. Jumping right in to week number 3. Man, the season's only 5 weeks away. I am jacked up. It's time to get these Xboxes humming again and needing a shower after Sunday afternoon because it gets real hot here at SFL HQ with all these machines running. Queen City, Baltimore is your headliner Sunday, July 29th. That is rivalry night on Sunday night. Friday, Chicago, Vancouver, we already mentioned, and here's the rest of the Week 3 slate. The Dallas Lobos open up their home schedule against the Las Vegas Fury on Saturday night after 2 games on the road to start the season against Houston and Oklahoma City. On Sunday in the afternoon, Houston is at Atlanta. Carolina goes to London. Tallahassee is at Tulsa, the first of those 2 meetings. Oklahoma City travels to New Orleans. And in the 5 o'clock window, Indy is at St. Louis. Sioux Falls goes to Alaska in the rematch of last season's playoff battle. And San Francisco is at Denver. You start with Jack Brown. Your thoughts on Week 3?
Well, of course, this is going to be a very interesting week since, I'm going to be just sitting by, looking at how all this carnage gets out there. Probably the game that I'm going to be most interested in watching over the weekend, probably going to be Carolina at London. Now, last season, Carolina and London were obviously not the classes of the East. They were the only 2 teams from the East to absolutely not go to the playoffs. And, of course, these were the 2 teams that went 3-9 out of the East. And so now it's going to be interesting to see how these 2 really bounce back after that sort of, I guess, disastrous run.
Yeah, it's a great point, Jack. And they even had an overtime game, too, last year, if I'm remembering correctly. So Carolina and London certainly both to prove, and both teams that have really retooled and regrouped and have some new pieces to their squad. So 2 teams to keep an eye on for sure. How about you, Marcus? Carolina, London off the analysis sheet, but who else deserves attention?
So I'm taking a look at Sioux Falls versus Alaska. During the Season 10 playoffs, the Storm beat the Sparrows 28-20. They have a tied series at 2-2, so whoever wins takes the series so far.
Oh, that is interesting. A handful of matchups for the Storm and the Sparrows. I'm surprised they haven't met more, but Sioux Falls is kind of like Mexico City. They're just kind of in every conference every season, it seems like. Curtis, Mexico City's on a bye, so Mexico City, Chicago, New Orleans get the early buys. If you were on a squad, would you rather have an early bye, late bye, middle bye? What would be your hope?
I think having the middle bye, I think, is probably the best way to do it. It really just kind of lets you split up your workload. You focus on the first half of the season. You set a goal for the first half in the locker room. You come into the bye and you kind of retool and reassess what you need to do for the second half to make it a more successful or just a similar type successful run. But talking about the schedule real quick, I do want to give a little bit of love to the Big Easy. The Week 3 is going to be when New Orleans is going to be opening up their stadium.
That's
for
true.
The first home
Good
to
point.
The OKC Renegades, who come into town. That should be a very, very good matchup. And I think by the end of Week 3, we will be able to see, much like we did last season with the expansion teams, just what kind of expansion team New Orleans is going to be.
So New Orleans opening up their home slate, Dallas opening up their home slate. I believe that is those are the only teams that still need a home opener in Week 3, but I could be wrong. We'll find out later in the show when we break down all of the individual team schedules and we go through the peaks and valleys of those challenges. Week 4, we start with Max Jackson after we take a look at the whole week. And the week is headlined by Alaska and Las Vegas. On Saturday, August 4th, Max Jackson was the only coach, or one of the only coach presently in the league to have beaten Alaska last season. Coincidentally, San Francisco's on a bye this week, pictured there in the frame. But Las Vegas is at home. That's a Saturday night primetime game on YouTube, and that's huge. Huge barometer. We're going to get Jackson's thoughts on that. Well, why don't we do it right now? Max, what do you think about hosting the defending champs?
I think that's where we really start to come in and show that we've got our stuff together. that we weren't just that we could beat Alaska again. And I think that's but I mean, there are always people are always these are veteran coaches at this point, right? So
yeah, we definitely got a lot of great. Even New Orleans has been a coach for a few seasons. Jeremy Vega was a coach last year, as were you, Max. So there aren't any rookie coaches out there anymore, or at least not many around the league. Here's the rest of the slate. Of course, you know about Friday's big game in Mexico. Sunday, Denver goes to Oklahoma City. Indianapolis travels to Queen City, the first of two meetings between the two. London's at Chicago. St. Louis travels to Carolina. Sioux Falls at Vancouver. Andy Hamilton's. I don't believe Vancouver's beaten Sioux Falls in their history. Atlanta is at Dallas. New Orleans is at Tallahassee. That's an interesting game. New Orleans had a little spat earlier this offseason about whose purple and gold is more deserving. So that's going to be interesting there in Tallahassee, and then Tulsa is at Houston. That's the Sunday night game on Twitch. Jack, what catches your eye?
Well, once again, as you said, that Tallahassee New Orleans game, it's always fun when you see people talk smack in any sort of context, because then at this point, that is where you back it up right there. Tallahassee obviously coming in as more or less as the giant in the league right now, and New Orleans is coming in as a young ragtag sort of group. It's gonna be interesting to see how that game in particular plays out down in Tallahassee, Florida.
All right, Marcus, what did your analysis tell you about Week 4?
So I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to mention a little bit about both the games you guys already mentioned. I think this is a unique week in the season where two expansion teams go on and take on two of the toughest teams from the season before, where Las Vegas and the Pharaohs are basically taking on the two teams that were in the championship. So I think that's an awesome way for those expansions to prove, that they belong in the league by taking out two of the toughest teams from the year before. But besides that, we have Atlanta versus Dallas, which is my team. I'll be taking on Crash Combs defense, and this is the first time in history of the SFL that Atlanta and Dallas have ever played.
Yeah, Atlanta, Dallas, Mighty RX mentioning into the chat that he expects that will be a big game. 76 viewers here with us. BJ Loveless 247, Super Train TMG 82, the Trash Car, Dodge STM, Iceman Gervin 44, Optimus Klein YouTube, Gaplotter 303, probably butchered that. Way to go. Pure 2K12, yeah.
Real quick, can I give my 2 cents on Week 4?
Oh man, yeah, sure, go ahead.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna kind of go on the expansion thing real quick, but only because of these two games for the expansion teams as a whole, between that have Las Vegas and New Orleans that we're looking at. These are the measuring stick games. About halfway through the season, maybe a little bit sooner, we saw at the end at last season where the contenders for the expansion teams started to separate themselves from the pretenders. I think this is the week 4, where we start to see that again. So Las Vegas and New Orleans, they definitely need to wake up on the right side of the bed to beat Alaska and Tallahassee, especially if either one is on their game. Also, just one simple request for New Orleans, Tallahassee. Can we please coordinate a couple days ahead of time to figure out the jersey situation so we don't have anything go wrong? Just a request. Just a request.
I'm gonna put you on that game, Curtis.
Okay. Put the blind guy on that game. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Hey, and
I'm down.
And AJ Francis, man, the guy's crying in the chat. I love you, AJ Francis. It's all Chris Curtis's fault because
it usually is.
He decided that was the end of that. Tom Pepper 19, more shout outs. Everybody likes shout outs. TJ Cag SFL. I missed Fuentes, I think, just signed today. Congratulations, Fuentes or Fuentes. Or Franz, or 21. So people keep asking me why I keep attempting these names, but when you can pronounce Jaquarinarius Dontamaterix without any issue, you should be able to do anything. So
it did take some practice, though.
Yeah, well,
or like my Discord Twitch username,
the Erupture Tan, right?
Yep, there you go.
See, See, Kanye Rockefeller's here, Bay Scout is here, etc., etc., etc. Love all the SFL love and attention. Let's move on to the good stuff. Week number 5 is up, and week number 5 is a goodie. 1 week until our big major announcement. Week 5 headlined by Houston at Tallahassee, Saturday, August 11th. That's a Saturday night game on YouTube, and that's a rematch of the semifinal from this past year as Tallahassee stepped over Houston to get to the Season 10 championship. You know, Houston stepped over Tallahassee in Season 6 to get to their championship, so both of those teams have a rich history together. Friday, of course, Alaska at London, we've already been over, and then the Sunday slate. Carolina's at Indianapolis, Baltimore's at St. Louis, Oklahoma City is at Atlanta. That's the first time those teams have ever met. Mexico City at Sioux Falls. That's a good one. Can you believe they've only played, I think, a couple of times in their history? Chicago at, whoop, boy, that's a typo. Somebody's getting a couple games against Sioux Falls in week 5. So we'll have to we'll figure that out on the well, actually, I tell you right now, behind the scenes, give you a little, boy, can I get through a whole broadcast without making a mistake? Like, is that even possible? Mexico City is at Sioux Falls. Chicago is at Queen City, and I see that the game is twice. So that there is that's on there, and boy, what a dumpster fire. Tulsa's at New Orleans, Vancouver's at San Francisco, and Vegas is at Denver Sunday night in vice versa. So just omit Chicago and Sioux Falls. I have no idea where that game came from. I'm sure they'll. Well, I don't even think they play later in the year, so it's an enigma. Curtis, tell me about Chicago and Sioux Falls.
Nice work. How about I tell you instead about Mexico City and Sioux Falls?
Okay.
This is these are the two teams that, of course, had the Miracle Montague play from season number 9. The Jonathan Sanchez lost his wits about them. You can see that play all over YouTube on multiple different streams and multiple different videos. But that's these are the two teams where it happened. That play happened in Mexico City, if I do recall. And Sioux Falls is going to be on home turf this time. Always fun when these two teams to get together, and I look for nothing to change here.
All right, how about you, Max Jackson? Week 5, what you're looking at, Dallas is on a bye too, by the way.
I think I'm doing a disservice if I don't say Vice Wars. Obviously, April 28th, I looked this up today. April 28th was the day that Thomas Rahman said, just because weed is legal in this doesn't mean it's allowed in the league.
Wait, can you repeat that again, Max? You cut out.
Yeah, Thomas Rahman said, just because weed is legal in the state doesn't mean it's allowed in the league. In which the director of player personnel himself said, the match should be called Vice Wars, and that's how it was born.
And there it is.
Yeah.
And now it's on the schedule. All right, well, that's going to be awesome on Twitch. Jack, what do you think about Week 5? Did we lose Jack? Where's my boy Jack at? Oh, well. Marcus, you're up.
Thanks, Cam. My pick for this week here in Week 5 is going to be Houston at Tallahassee. Houston's got a brand new rookie quarterback in Kentez Johnson that came in here in our rookie class, and I'm more than happy to see what he can do against that Tallahassee defense.
All right, Jack, do we have you?
Can you not hear him, Kim?
No. No. Jack, why don't you hang up?
I can hear him too, actually.
Yeah, try to rejoin the call. I don't know. Him and I got our wires crossed, I guess. I think it was that Chicago-Sioux Falls game screwed everybody up. Came in here and attacked Jack Brown's microphone. So we're going to try to get Jack back on the air here before our big unveiling. Jack, you there?
He was actually...
Am I working now?
Yes. Yes, you are.
There he is.
Give us Week 5.
Finally. Yeah, okay, so before I get into my analysis, I'd like to issue a brief correction for what Curtis said. The Miracle Monty play in Season 9 was not against Sioux Falls. That was against San Antonio, now
I got my
Denver. It's
Curtis,
Chicago Sioux Falls.
how dare you make a mistake? This is a
Terrible.
perfect broadcast. How dare you?
Plus one for
it's
dumpster.
Chicago Sioux Falls. It's the game of the season, man. I'm telling you. No. But I'm certainly. You ever have those moments where you just like you can't really pinpoint why, but you're just feeling a real good matchup coming? That's what I'm feeling out of the current matchup schedule between Baltimore and St. Louis. You know, those two teams. There's something interesting going on about them. They obviously have not played since season 9. Obviously, after season 9, Baltimore put their franchise on pause. And so, you know, it's going to be a nice classic matchup. I'm feeling something good coming out of that one, Cam.
All right, well, that's week 5. Thank you, analysts, for your thoughts on the first 5 weeks of the season. Now to week 6. And boy, do we have something exciting to share with you in week 6. Coming in week 6 to the Twitch front page is what we're calling the SFL Blitz. The SFL Blitz, combining the league's most viewed video on YouTube. If you don't know what that is, that was our red zone attempt a long time ago. Combine that video, which has almost 3,000 views last time I checked, with modern day league technology, and we will be bringing 5 games to the Twitch front page all at once. And this time, you'll be able to watch all the games on your own elsewhere. And Red Zone is coming back. SFL Blitz comes to you week 6, and it is the headliner coming to the Twitch front page. Also in week 6, Friday night, Dallas is at Tulsa. Saturday, Atlanta is at New Orleans. That matchup was leaked earlier this year. Here are the games that potentially could be on Red Zone. One of them will be flexed into the game of the week on Monday night. Indianapolis and Chicago, St. Louis and Queen City, Denver at Vancouver, the second of 2 meetings between those 2 squads. And by the way, Indianapolis is 0-2 against Chicago, so they're trying to beat the Wildcats for the first time. Las Vegas is at Mexico City, London is at Baltimore, Tallahassee is at Oklahoma City. Following the Red Zone, part of a doubleheader on Sunday, San Francisco's at Alaska, part of rivalry night on Sunday night, as the former NFL running back takes on the defending champion, Max Paul from the Storm. So, Marcus, SFL Blitz, your thoughts?
Thanks, Cam. This is going to be a really interesting week here. And I believe on this particular week, we're going to have Atlanta taking on New Orleans, if I'm correct, which would be the first time that myself and Xander Gold, another rookie, are going to be against each other this season.
Yep, and that was one of the games that we teased earlier today. We thought that was a pretty big matchup. Didn't want that getting clouded by front page hoopla, and thought it deserved its own night on Saturday. Back to Chris Curtis, Sioux Falls, Carolina, Houston on a bye this week. It's the first week of the season where 3 teams are on a bye. But Curtis, we've got the SFL Blitz, and we're going to do something that I don't think the front page has ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, the front page has ever seen, or anybody in SFL Nation, with a majority of them have not seen as well, as we've seen an influx of users the last couple of seasons. With that said, it creates a little bit of a dynamic that you don't really know what is going on until you see it on Blitz. And I'm sure we'll find a way to cue in on the games where plays are going to happen. And it's going to be a lot of fun to see how that unfolds. Of the games that are going to be on the Blitz, Indianapolis and Chicago are really 2 of the teams that I'm going to be looking at for that particular event. I really like this matchup that I did when they played last year as well. I believe they played in season 10 if I'm not mistaken. And it's one that it should be good. They're very close geographically, and close proximity breeds contempt, and it will continue here.
All right, hey, Max Jackson, Vegas, a part of that slate at Mexico City on Blitz. Have you ever seen the SFL Red Zone video on YouTube from back a few seasons ago?
Actually, I just finally saw it because Max Paul put it up on some throwback videos. I was in the seats with a few other people the other day watching some Red Zone. So it was the first time I'd ever seen it. It was exciting. Constant action.
Well, we're bringing that to the Twitch front page. Hopefully that'll get some new recruits in during the season just before cuts. And by the way, another announcement just randomly here on the Schedule Release Show. You heard it here first. The roster deadline to make final transactions has actually been pushed back because of buys. I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe that it's now week 11 is the last week where you can make roster adjustments. We're crunching down the time where you can't make any transactions, or condensing it rather. So that'll be big for incoming rookies and building up future draft classes and all that good stuff. So that's also something to keep in mind heading into the season. So week 6, all about SFL Blitz. That's going to be exciting on the Twitch front page. And that is Sunday, August 19th. All right, week 7, after all the SFL Blitz hoopla, as we enter in the midway point of the SFL season, and this is where things start becoming mighty critical. We'll get to Jack Brown's thoughts first. Oklahoma City Sioux Falls will lead Military Appreciation Week, and we'll have more information on what all that is going to entail as we hope to help out some charities along the way here with our platform and everything we can do on the Twitch front page, etc. So we are very interested and excited about getting military organizations involved with us as Oklahoma City, led by retired Army vet Michael Irvine and current active duty Jason McGee, leads Sioux Falls. That's Sunday night on Twitch. Friday is Queen City, Indianapolis. Sunday is London at Carolina, the second of 2 meetings. And then the Sunday slate, Chicago at Baltimore, New Orleans at Houston, St. Louis at Denver, Dallas at Tallahassee, Atlanta at Tulsa, Vancouver at Alaska, another rematch in Mexico City at San Francisco. To Jack first, Vegas is on a bye. What do you think of week 7?
Well, coming into week 7, I'm really looking at that rematch between Alaska and Vancouver. I can't help but just feel as if those are going to be 2 teams that are really trying to vie for some sort of playoff spot. Alaska, I think, is probably going to be gunning more for that top 2, as, of course, they got one last season. They won the West, if I'm not mistaken. And, of course, Vancouver, I feel as if they're going to be gunning for a really low wildcard seed at this point in the season. And so that's going to be a very crucial mid-season playoff matchup.
Marcus, what catches your attention in week 7?
So I'm probably a little bit biased, but I'm a big fan of the rookie games when you get to see some of the big rookie players go at it. This week we have 2 rookie quarterbacks. In week 7 we have Xander Gold against Kentez Johnson when New Orleans faces Houston. I think that's going to be huge because it's a big Southern rivalry match that could have big implications as the playoffs come closer.
All right, Curtis, what do you think of this week 7 slate? And is New Orleans-Houston really that game to watch for you?
No. I'm a kind of an old school kind of thought process on this.
You're calling
Chicago
it.
and Baltimore.
Sorry.
Yep. Oh, okay. Well, should be fun either way. But yeah, I'm looking at Chicago, Baltimore. That matchup back when the Vultures were indeed the Crabs. When the Wildcats and Crabs got together, it was always fun. I don't expect anything different here. And Wildcats traveling to Maryland to take them on is always a pretty special treat to watch.
And finally, Max, to you in week 7. That slate is it's critical because this is, as you know, back when you were with San Francisco last year, this is about when you started to make your serious push.
Yeah, Cam. I think that the game I really want to watch is Carolina and London. That's the one that interests me the most. I think Carolina's got a lot of talent on this team that they've kept, and they've got a lot of guys working hard. So I think that'll be the fun one to watch between a team that's been around a long time with a lot of new guys that have taken over as the head coach and general manager, and then you've got London that's really trying to prove themselves this season that they can make it to the playoffs.
All right, week 8, as we roll along here. After week 8, we're going to jump to week 13. You'll be able to see all the games through, but we want to get to all the team schedules, make sure we have enough time for that this evening. Queen City at Atlanta highlights week 8. Friday the 31st, Tulsa's at Alaska. Saturday, Sioux Falls takes on Denver in prime time. in the Sunday slate. Oklahoma City, Dallas, rematch from week 1. San Francisco is at New Orleans, battle of a couple of the newer teams in the league. Carolina and Chicago. Sorry, lost my place there for just a moment. St. Louis is at London, another rematch of week 1. Mexico City goes to Houston. That's a cross-conference game. Vancouver is at Las Vegas. Indianapolis is at Baltimore, rematch of week 2. Let's swing it reverse around the horn, back to Max. Your week 8 thoughts.
Well, this is where Las Vegas comes off a bye week, and then they're playing Vancouver, who was one of the teams that really schemed against the Sharks both times, even though I wasn't the head coach the first time, so I've only got one loss to Andy. But I think this time around, a lot of guys on the team, there's a lot of trash talking going on. There's a lot that both teams want to prove to each other that maybe we can tie it up on my coaching record with. And so that's a game I'm really going to be coming on that bye week. I'll have an extra week to prepare even, so that's something I'm excited about.
All right, Curtis, Tallahassee's on a bye in week 8, and just looking at the slate, from my view, Mexico City, Houston is just a battle of a couple heavyweights. So is Indy, Baltimore. There's a lot of heavyweight fights on this week 8 slate.
It's really going to depend on what version of Houston we've seen up until this point, because they've had a couple of Jekyll and Hyde seasons, last couple seasons, where they'll start well and finish poorly, or they'll start poorly and finish well. So I really want to see which version of Houston we get, and Mexico City is a handful no matter which way you get them, so it should be a lot of fun.
All right, we're going to move into week 13, just moving this show along. I want to make sure that we have time for everybody's team schedule. This is the final week of the season, people. These are the matchups that are really, really going to matter. Atlanta and Oklahoma City. Now, if you recall last year, Atlanta needed to beat Mexico City. If they did that, they were in. They couldn't do that. Oklahoma City needed an Atlanta loss. That's what they got. They ended up going to the playoffs. And now this year, they're going to play each other at the end of the season. Why not just put the bubble teams up against each other, and who knows, maybe the two will be back there, both hoping, obviously, to not be in that situation heading into the final week of the year. St. Louis, Alaska, and Tulsa have byes the last week of the season. That means that they have a bye before the playoffs, so that could be interesting if, in fact, they know who their opponent is going to be in advance. It's interesting with these odd weeks and odd number of teams where these byes fall. The other Week 13 games, all of them critical, Indianapolis and London. It's actually the only meeting between Indianapolis and London as Nathan Lee plays his former team. Carolina's at Baltimore. It's the only Week 1 rematch in Week 13. Queen City's at Chicago. New Orleans is at Dallas. Vancouver is at Sioux Falls. Denver's at San Francisco. Mexico City's at Vegas. And Tallahassee is at Houston. Marcus, your look ahead into the final week of the SFL regular season.
I think it's going to be an interesting week. It's a big week of rivalries. It's just really going to make or break the playoffs, probably for a lot of teams. I'm really excited for a bunch of the Southern matches that, because I'm in that conference. I'm looking at these are going to be the second matchup for Tallahassee and Houston, which I think is going to be a good battle. Atlanta has their battle against Oklahoma City, and then we have New Orleans versus Dallas, and I think it's going to be a great ending for the Southern Conference, and I think it's going to be a must-watch for everybody.
All right, Jack, if there's one game on the there's always one game, right? There's one game that makes or breaks a season for the teams playing or somebody else. What is that game on this schedule?
I'm going to have to go and agree with Marcus here. These Southern Conference matchups are absolutely wild. And, of course, you're looking at Dallas, New Orleans. That's going to be a big make or break for Dallas. And, of course, also Queen City and Chicago. Chicago, I can't help but to feel as if they're going to be in this sort of situation. And, of course, Queen City, they've had a bit of a history recently of just barely sneaking into the playoffs. So that's going to be definitely a matchup to watch out for there.
All right, what do you think, Curtis, about this Week 13 slate? You know, this is the crunch time. This is when teams play for all the marbles. And St. Louis, actually, who's pictured, who lost to Oklahoma City last season, needed a win and couldn't get it. They won't have to worry about it because they don't play Week 13.
Yeah, they got to get all their stuff done before Week 12 or after Week 12, and that's going to be a tall task. But I'm taking a look at Tallahassee and Houston, and the reason I'm taking a look at it is because if Houston finds themselves in a situation where they could it's a win-in scenario, they have the toughest task possible, in my opinion, going up against a Tallahassee Pride roster that is really just a buzzsaw in clutch situations. I really, really don't like Houston's chances if they let it get to that point. Got to take care of business weeks 1 through 12. Get to Week 13. If you can take a loss and get in, do it at that point. But this is the fun week. This is when all the scenarios get posted in the SFL Alerts channel. This is when everybody's doing some scoreboard watching while their game is going on. This is when us broadcasters are doing some scoreboard watching too, so we can keep up to date with all the scenarios. This is the week to be involved in the SFL, and I'm always looking forward to late end of the season scenarios.
All right, I always do it every year. It's my favorite part of the schedule release show. The first person to say their team's name, you're going to see that team's schedules first. I'm looking in the chat. And oh, by the way, people that are in this call right now, that's cheating. So you're not going to count.
I was about ready to go for it.
Because you're ahead, so that doesn't count.
And I would have looked really stupid, too, if I did.
Alaska is in first. That was from Ryan Davidson. So we're going to take a look at we're just going to summarize the defending champions schedule here, and we're going to just see what they've got going on. They've got 3 of their first 5 games on the road. Alaska is one of 2 teams that has a 3-game road trip. The last 3 of the last 4 games of the season: Mexico City, Sioux Falls, and Denver. And before that, they have to host Tulsa. So a tough stretch for Alaska late. Their cross-conference games are at London and versus Tulsa. Marcus, your thoughts on Alaska's schedule, the good and the bad?
I think for Alaska, the toughest thing for them is that they have to finish up the season before Week 13 because they have that last round bye. Looking through there, I think they have a pretty tough start to the season. Mexico City, Vancouver, Sioux Falls, that could be pretty tough.
And 4 primetime games on Twitch to start. Jack, your thoughts on Alaska? Not all of our analysts are going to be able to get to all of the teams because we want to keep this to 90 minutes, but we'll go to Jack and then we'll move along to the next squad. Go ahead, Jack.
Well, once again, as you said, Cam, Alaska's got all their road games really just kind of condensed together. 3 of their first 5 are on the road. And, of course, given the location of the Alaska Storm, when I mapped out the SFL, they're really far away from everybody else. So jet lag is obviously going to be a very big issue for them. Other than that, though, really, they've got a pretty decent schedule on their hands right here. I don't believe this is going to be too tough for them. I mean, the games against Mexico City and Sioux Falls are obviously very difficult, but you're going to get a couple easy ones in there too, I think, Alaska.
A couple of new owners at the end of the schedule at Denver and versus Las Vegas. All right, let's do it. Here we go. Right now, give me Xander Gold got it. He didn't even know it. He didn't even know the contest was happening, but I saw it. The New Orleans Pharaohs are the next team we're going to preview and take a look at. If I could find their... Oh, my apologies. I'm having some technical difficulties with New Orleans' schedule, so we're going to have to come back to New Orleans. I'm going to go to the second team here, and that was Denver. So we're going to take a look at Denver's schedule. The Denver Nightwings, and their slate is as follows. 3 of the 4 games at the end of the season are on the road. One of those games is Sioux Falls, the other two Vegas and San Francisco. Denver has Sioux Falls twice in 4 weeks towards the back half of the season, and it starts off by hosting Canada, then going to Mexico, then traveling to Oklahoma for a cross-conference game. Denver's a little all over the place early. At Oklahoma City versus St. Louis for cross-conference. We start with Max. What do you think of Denver's schedule?
I think out of everything, I think they've got a good schedule. I mean, I like the San Francisco at the end, the Week 13 match, because that was the matchup where they played. San Francisco played San Antonio, which now they're Denver. So to me, that's the matchup I kind of want to see, and maybe will come down to another. Who wins that match will determine wild card placement. So that's the exciting one for me. That's late in the season. I think the West Coast, they've got all this playoff talent there. You've got four playoff teams, right? So all those games are going to be exciting for me to watch, in my opinion.
Yeah, the New Orleans file corrupted, guys. My apologies. So we'll get New Orleans their schedule after the show. And hey, all of these desktop wallpapers will be available to download as well after the show. So we've got one for every team, so that you're able to put it on the back of your desktop. And it was actually built specifically for your desktop so that the menu at the bottom wouldn't cover the games at the bottom, and all that stuff. So you're good to go there. All right, I looked up. I saw Sioux Falls in the chat from AJ Pick 6. So we're going to go to Sioux Falls next. We're sticking with the Western Conference here as we roll through the back part of the schedule release show. Thanks for everyone for being here. 84 viewers strong as we go through all these team schedules. And Sioux Falls starts with 3 of 4 on the road. They have another 3 out of 4 on the road later in the season, but do end the home stretch at home against Denver and at home against Vancouver, at Tulsa, at Alaska. First 2 road games. That's tough. Curtis, what do you think of Sioux Falls' schedule?
This is going to be a tough one to start. I see Tulsa and Alaska. Those are going to be, again, 2 tough games, as you mentioned before. But the games against Vancouver, against Las Vegas and Vancouver, hosting Las Vegas, going to Canada for Vancouver, those are 2 very winnable games. Sioux Falls, if they can pull, an even 50-50 coin flip against either Tulsa or Alaska, I really think they could set up themselves up for the really good start. You mentioned first 3 of 4 on the road. They end with 3 of 4 at home, so they do get a little bit of justice in the back half of the schedule.
All right, Marcus, what do you think about Sioux Falls?
I think Sioux Falls has a pretty good schedule. Looking besides the fact that they have some of their away games pretty bunched up, I think they have a pretty good amount of games spread out throughout the seasons, a mix of tougher games and easier games, which I think it'll make it more bearable as they go along. But I'm looking at, near the end of the home stretch versus Alaska and Mexico City, which will make it pretty tough as they continue to wrap up their season, but then they finish with the 2 home games.
All right, from this point forward, I want to see the first team in the chat. We've broken down Alaska, Denver, and Sioux Falls. And again, sincerest apologies to New Orleans. There it is. James Klein, 16 with Carolina. And AJ Francis had it as well. So the Carolina Skyhawks are next on the schedule release show breakdown. And for Carolina, they started home against Baltimore. They have 3 home games on the back side of their schedule. Tallahassee, Chicago, and Queen City, 2 of those 3 playoff teams. Baltimore starts and ends their year. That's the only matchup that does so. 3 of 4 on the road, and actually, if you bunch it up, 5 of 7 on the road from their 2nd to their 8th games. So Carolina, definitely a more comfortable slate at the back of the board, but they do have London, Chicago, and St. Louis right in the middle of their schedule. Jack, what do you think of the Skyhawks and how this schedule favors or does not favor them?
I'm going to say that this schedule right here actually somewhat favors the Skyhawks. Sure, they do have a lot of road games towards the meat of the season, but those road games are against teams that are pretty winnable, if you ask me. Like you have San Francisco on the road, London on the road. Even I would say Indy and Chicago can be winnable, especially given the fact that, Carolina going into Chicago, they obviously kind of know what Shan could be cooking up since Shan was formerly a coordinator for them. It does get a bit more difficult towards the end with Tallahassee and Queen City in 2 or 3 weeks. However, once again, they do end off and start off with Baltimore, so that might also play to their benefit.
Baltimore was another team, or Carolina was another team that knocked out Baltimore during a chase for the playoffs. That was Shan Varner's last game as a coach in Carolina, but obviously the Skyhawks dashed the Baltimore's chances a few seasons ago as well, so that'll end up happening again in Week 13. All right, taking a look at the chat. Don't see anything right away, but I'm looking for my next team. 4 teams broken down, 1 on retainer, and 16 to go. London is the suicide king with the buzz in. Let's take a look at the London Knights schedule for season 11. They end with 2 at home, 4 of 5 on the road. They're in the thick of the schedule at Baltimore, at Carolina, at Queen City, at Vegas. But 3 of those 4 games are against teams that are not normally playoff foes. They end at home with Baltimore and Indy. They get Queen City at home early. They get Alaska at home early. Not the easiest of schedules with Alaska and Las Vegas on the board, but it's London's schedule nonetheless. Big expectations with a lot of big free agent acquisitions. And fun fact, London has the most players in the top 100 in Discord activity of any team in the league. Max, you're going to be playing London this season. What are your thoughts on what London has to go through?
Well, I think they only get better each week. So the more home games they have early on, the better chance they have to win those. And then the later games where I see they have a few away games, I see them being they figured themselves out with their new players, their playbooks firing all cylinders. So I think they're going to make it to the playoffs this season, looking at this schedule.
So you're thinking it's an interesting thought, Max. You're thinking that because they have so many new pieces, it's critical that they have more home games at the front of the schedule so that they can, get that 6-point swing or whatever, maybe win a game or 2 that's close at home, and then go on the road and have things solved.
I think that's what it's going to look like for London. Yes.
Curtis, you buying that?
I'm buying that a bit, but I'm not buying it for the same reasons. I am buying that London is going to be a playoff team for reasons that I mentioned earlier. I think they are going to be a much improved bunch, similar to the reasons that you gave above. What I'm looking at in their first 5 games, I'm looking at 3 very winnable games. They go to St. Louis, they host Carolina, and then they go to Chicago. Queen City and Alaska are the outliers in that if they can sneak a victory out of one of those 2, they could be off to a roaring start for London in their second season. So I'm looking forward to seeing how their first 5 games go. That'll make a good barometer for the rest of the season and their playoff chances.
All right, I looked up, and TMG82 had Baltimore in the chat. It was the top team there in the chat. So we're going to go to the Baltimore Vultures now and take a look at the Vultures slate of games. And let me tell you, they probably have one of the toughest starts in the league. They go 4 of 5 on the road to start, including at Indianapolis, at Mexico City, and at Carolina, who is a rival of this team. But then obviously the home slate gets real nice at the end. 3 straight at home in the middle of the season: London, Chicago, and Indy. And then Dallas and Carolina, big games, but late in the season they have both of them at home. Marcus, how does Baltimore's schedule look, and what can they do with those early road games to help them out?
I think this is a really interesting schedule for Baltimore. It really gives them the chance to prove themselves in the league. They have a really tough start with the first 3 out of the 4. Actually, it's the first 4 out of the 1, 2, 3.
Did I say crabs again? God.
Yes.
It says crabs on the top of the schedule. Cam.
I was about to say, you want to know something about the Vultures too, Cam? They're not called the Crabs.
They were the crab. I'm telling you, when you broadcast, remember, I used to do all of the Baltimore Crabs games. They were the Baltimore Crabs for 3.5 years. This is confusing stuff, folks. Everybody that just came in is going, what the hell? Is the commissioner having a stroke? Why does he keep calling them the Crabs?
We need a bigger dumpster for this fire. If we could get that one of those, that'd be awesome.
My goodness gracious! All right, whoever I interrupted, please continue.
Sure. So I think they have a good chance to make it to the playoffs as long as they can take home some of these away games. If they can get through, a good portion of the first four out of the 5 games are away games. If they can make it through those goods with a winning record at that point, I think they have a really good shot of making the playoffs in the second half.
Who's next? The Baltimore freaking Vultures. Did you say the Santa Fe Gorillas?
Hey, if we're going throwback here, why not?
Too many damn names. Here, I'm just going to get them out of the way. Eric Vincent asked. The Dallas Lobos, so don't screw them up, too. Let's take a look at Dallas' schedule.
It says Roughnecks, I'm done.
If it says Roughnecks, all right, see? Got that right. But see, they weren't the Roughnecks for 3.5 years. That's just a really hard thing. Forgive me, TJ. Anyway, Dallas starts with back-to-back road games at Oklahoma City and Houston. Then follow up with 2 at home, then 2 on the road, and then a mishmash of games down the way. But do host conference opponents Tallahassee and New Orleans to end the season. In fact, Dallas has 3 conference home games. The 1 road game at the back end of the schedule is a non-conference game. So Dallas plays 3 teams, and I believe, as I double-check the schedule, they are all 3 teams that they play twice. So very interesting for Dallas that 3 of the 4 or 3 of the 5 conference teams that they play twice, they all the home games against those teams are at the end. Your thoughts, Jack, on Dallas, and is that the big part of the schedule that needs to be paid attention to?
It's certainly going to be interesting, I think, because you're going to be having all these rematches coming up right at the tail end of the season, and also they got something that's decently favorable for them. I wouldn't say towards the end there, because you're taking on Tallahassee, but then you're kind of easing it off there, taking on New Orleans, and hopefully a spot where they have clinched the playoff spot. Of course, early on, too, you take it to the road against Oklahoma City, then you take it to the road to Houston. I think they have something pretty favorable on their hands there. If they can just get those wins early, then, even if they go 2 for 3 on the road in those early games, then, at the end of the season, you're fine.
Max, your thoughts on Dallas?
I think I like Crash Combs having this whole time to strategize. They've got an interesting look, so I think it'll be all those games. I don't know what they're going to bring. They made it to the championship not too long ago, right? So I think they're...
Yep, season 7.
I think they've got the right personnel to start another push for that. I see a few games here and there, but I think overall, yeah. I mean, I don't want them to say that they'll beat us, but I think all the other, and there's definitely has a chance to really make a playoff run at least.
It's season 8, actually. Let's the Dallas made the championship. Just wanted to throw a correction out there. Let's do the Vancouver Crabs next.
Yeah.
Everyone's the Crabs.
See what the Vancouver Crabs got going on. For Vancouver, the Legion, they got to go to Denver the first week, but after that, 3 straight home games. Vancouver has played a difficult road slate at the beginning of the season for the last few seasons now, and so they, for the first time in quite some time, get some home games at the front of their schedule: Alaska, Chicago, and Sioux Falls. They end the year with 2 very challenging road games, Indy and Sioux Falls. Let's go to Marcus first. What do you think of Vancouver?
Thanks, Cam. Taking a look here at their schedule here, it looks like, they have a pretty favorable start. The first 4 out of their first 5 are all home games, and then it looks like their away games are pushed more towards the back half, so they can get some momentum on their side going through the first half of the season, and then just got to push through some of those harder away games going against potentially Alaska, Vegas, and Indianapolis and Sioux Falls on the second half, and they should do okay.
Max, I got to ask here, you're going to be playing Cody Hill. This is in week, it's all the way down to September the 2nd. But you only play Cody Hill once. It's at your building. And you were kind of the first team that he could get his revenge on in Vancouver, just in terms of where he could have gone. You looking forward to playing Mr. Cody Hill in Vegas?
Yeah, I think we can stop the run game, and I think you're going to see one of the best running back games this season, and a great rookie quarterback. So I'm excited this whole season. We got one of the best. I'm excited about Robert Redford. He's really gonna be all-star talent. So I think we're gonna have the better running game, and if they want to try to run, we're gonna shut them down. That's all.
Yeah, that's something we didn't touch on. So let's go to Sioux Falls. No, actually, well, yeah, that's in week 2 that Sioux Falls takes on Vegas. Looking at the chat here, just saw Indianapolis. That was from FRZ Cheetah. So let's go to the Red Devils, and I apologize. It appears that the Vegas schedule was also is also not available here live on the show. So I'm going to get Vegas and New Orleans as soon as possible. I've been up since 4 in the morning, clearly. Indianapolis Crabs, here we go. Buying week 10, 3 of 4 to start on the road. 3 home games at the back end: Chicago, St. Louis, Vancouver, and all 3 of those teams did not make the playoffs. In fact, London and Baltimore didn't either. Neither did Chicago, neither did Carolina, neither did St. Louis, neither did Baltimore. Indianapolis, probably just dating back to last season, has one of the easiest schedules in the league this year. Get Curtis's thoughts on that.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I think this is a very favorable schedule for them to make a return trip to the playoffs. They'll be 2 for 2 from their expansion season last season. With that said, Indianapolis has made a reputation for themselves to be the anti-passing game. You will not succeed long-term trying to throw against the secondary. I feel like that's going to really be a sticking point this season. But offensively, they need to fix the run game. They cannot rely on the quarterback position week in and week out to win them games offensively and rely on their defense. They have to get something going on the ground. And if they can do that, then this is going to be a very, very good team for a long time.
Hey, for everybody on the show, if your team's schedule has already been made, you think you've got it, you think you can go away, please stay here. Even if you just leave your browser open. Of course, we're going after that Twitch partnership. We want to be able to have 75 average viewers consistently throughout all of our broadcasts. It's the game that we have to play. Please don't leave. We've only got about 11 minutes left in the show, so stick around. If you do, for whatever reason, have to leave, and it's no ifs, ands, or buts, leave the browser open, so you don't hurt against our viewership. We greatly appreciate that. AJ Pick 6 wants to see the St. Louis Gladiators, so that's what we're going to do here next. The St. Louis Gladiators schedule. They are the only team in the league that has 3 straight home games: London, New Orleans, and Indy. They do back that up with one of only 2 teams to have 3 straight road games: Queen City, Denver, London. They also have 5 of 6 on the road. After hosting Carolina, they're back out to Chicago and Indianapolis. And on top of that, St. Louis and Chicago is the only matchup on the schedule that plays 2 times in a 3-week period. So wonky schedule for St. Louis. What are your thoughts on St. Louis's look, Jack?
Well, the St. Louis Crabs, as they all say. But in all seriousness, they do have a very interesting dynamic to their schedule, having 3 straight home games to open up the season, but then you're closing it out on a pretty long road trip around the United States. And of course, those first 3 home games, those are against some what many would probably consider easy opponents. You have London, who failed to make the playoffs last season, and I think currently are on a 8-game losing streak, go interseason. you're going against New Orleans, who, sure, an expansion team can always blow up here in the SFL. There's always the equal chances they just absolutely tank. And then you have Indianapolis, who, yes, they didn't make the playoffs, but they went 6-6. So obviously, that is a somewhat favorable matchup for St. Louis.
And St. Louis,
and of course,
I think they beat them late last year, did they not? If I remember correctly.
If memory serves, yeah, I think they split the series against each other. And of course, at the end, they're going to they're of course hitting the road to Chicago, then Indianapolis, and they're taking it home against Chicago. That's another very interesting sort of dynamic right there.
All right, just moving through because I want to get to everybody that we possibly can. I've seen a lot of Oklahoma City in the chat, so we'll look at the Renegades schedule. They start with 2 at home, Dallas and Tulsa. They go to New Orleans. They go to Atlanta. Not a ton of frequent flyer miles needed for Houston or for Oklahoma City season. They do end rough. Houston, Tulsa, Atlanta. 3 teams that either were in the playoffs last year or were very close to making it. You also have Tallahassee, Sioux Falls, Dallas along that back end, and 4 of those 6 are on the road. So Oklahoma City going to have to do quick business early. Max, what do you think Oklahoma City looks like this year?
I mean, they made it last season. I like week 2's Tulsa versus Oklahoma, the Tale of the Outlaws, I'm calling it, where they go against the Desperados. I think the momentum that they have early on in the first few games could lead them into a strong rest of the season. And I think you'll see that if the team can go 3-0, 4-0, every team last season that went 4-0 last season made it to the playoffs.
And the Renegades have a bye in week 9. Who else is next? Queen City, Achilles Frank. Wanting to take a look at the Corsairs schedule. We can certainly accommodate. We'll get Curtis's thoughts on it. It's his own team. They end with 2 road games at Carolina, at Chicago. They start with 2 of 3 on the road. That early season schedule with Houston in cross conference all the way across the pond to what we think is going to be an improved London team at Baltimore for the Vultures home opener. Suck it, I got it right. And for all the people that left, you're never going to know. Indianapolis at home will be another challenge. So, Curtis, Queen City's known for starting slow. Is that going to be the case again?
The way the schedule shapes out, it's going to be a coin flip as to whether that happens or not. I know know Queen City generally is middle of the season type team, and it's a coin. They kind of go, one way or the other at the end. But it's going to be tough. I mean, they split 2 home, 2 road games. But I'm looking at that London game. I'm looking at that Indianapolis game. And even Houston, they're going to be 3 very, very tough games. I think Baltimore could be a win as long as we take care of our business. But this is a barn burner of a schedule. It should be a lot of fun to see what the offseason has brought to the team.
And hey, shout out to the best community ever. Back up to 82 viewers. That did not take long. You guys are the best. Really, really appreciate it, despite all of Chris Curtis's flaws on this show. The Atlanta Swarm, a Week 12 bye. They have a late bye, too. And we didn't get a chance, actually, to talk about the byes that we may have skipped over. Byes in Week 9, Oklahoma City, Baltimore, and Vancouver. The byes in Week 10, Indianapolis, Denver, and London. Byes in Week 11, Queen City, and byes in Week 12, Atlanta. And, of course, we went over the Week 13 byes. Atlanta has 3 of 5 at the end of the year at home. They start on the road, but they also have 3 of 4 after that initial road game against Tallahassee, Houston, Oklahoma City. Tough slate for Atlanta, but their road games are more evenly distributed maybe than some of these other teams. Marcus, you play for Atlanta. You're going to be quarterbacking. It's your first season. What do you think of your schedule?
It's tough to say. I mean, the Atlanta Crabs, they are in a very tough conference, the Southern Conference. You never know how Tallahassee's going to do.
What? What did you say?
Sorry, did I say Atlanta Crabs?
All right.
I meant to say
Okay.
the Atlanta Sportsman.
All right. This is a straight troll job. I've been set up. Somebody put crabs on my graphic. I just read from the teleprompter. Like, this is ridiculous. Go ahead. Go ahead, Marcus.
You know, I think our schedule is pretty balanced when it comes to we have a mix of home games, a mix of away games. But what makes me nervous is not knowing how Houston's going to do, how Tallahassee's going to do, how New Orleans is going to do. This could be an extremely tough conference, and I don't think it's home and away that's going to make the difference. You know, we just got to play tough and stick it out through the entire year, but I think it's going to be a rough road for us.
Seeing a couple San Franciscos. We got San Francisco, Tulsa, Tallahassee. Those are going to be the next three that we get to. The San Francisco Sharks slate led by Gabriel Manning and that powerful offense. That defense is going to need some work in the secondary, but that's, that's what progression is for. At Vegas to start. San Francisco actually only has one time all season where they have back-to-back road games, and it's brutal. At Vancouver and at Mexico City in back-to-back weeks to Canada and then to Mexico. That's really rough. Carolina and Vancouver, home games early, winnable, including Denver and Vegas as well. You've got 4 teams with either a lack of playoff experience or new leadership. So San Francisco has some opportunity here, but what can they do without Max Jackson? And with Jackson being gone, they lost a few pieces. Gabriel Manning's certainly still there, and Ahmad Shima was a big pickup in free agency from Houston. Jack, this San Francisco team, just like it was last year, just kind of an enigma. Don't know what we're going to get heading into week 1. How do you see it playing out for the Sharks based off their schedule?
Well, of course, you're going in and you're taking on your old coach. That's always a very hard game to go in and try to win. And, of course, they have that extremely difficult road situation at Vancouver and at Mexico City. If memory serves correctly, they've never played Mexico City, but Vancouver last season. Vancouver and San Francisco was one of the biggest matchups I remember out of, I guess, more or less the cellar of the SFL last season. It was always a very intense matchup, so that's going to be very hard for them. And just overall, as you said, Cam, this is going to be a very interesting Sharks team we're going to be seeing coming into the season now without Max Jackson.
Sorry. Clearly can't type and think at the same time. That's why they say don't pay attention to the chat too much. Clearly, I'm not listening to that advice. Tallahassee is next. Curtis, save me from the sinking ship. The Tallahassee Pride Week 8 bye at Atlanta, at Tulsa. They're also at home against Indianapolis. That is a crushing start. First 3 games. That's tough sledding. It is Tallahassee. I'm sure they're more than capable. They end with 3 of 4 at Carolina, their rival. And then the Texas two-step at Dallas, at Houston. I think they may be the only team to do that all season long. The Pride went 14-1 last year. We all know what that one loss was. What do you think of Tallahassee's schedule, Curtis?
I honestly, they are still, in my opinion, even though Alaska won the championship, this is the team to beat in the SFL conference.
Man, I can already see the chat blowing up about that.
Yes. Well, when you look at it, 14-1. The one loss was, of course, to Alaska, but the 14 wins tell me that it doesn't matter what their schedule says, that they should be able to measure up to it. So I could see them, of the 12 regular season games I could easily see them going 10-2, maybe 9-3, but it's gonna be another pretty successful season for Tallahassee until they prove me differently.
All right, we have Tulsa, Chicago, Houston, Mexico City left to get to, I believe. And then we will have gotten to everybody. We want to stay true to our word here on the 90-minute limit, so we're going to run through these, give a dash of analysis. Atlanta, Tallahassee, 2 out of 3 on the road to end the season for Tulsa. But Tulsa's got Alaska, a playoff team, Houston, a playoff team, Tallahassee, a playoff team, and Oklahoma City, a playoff team. Is 4 of their last 5 games, and the only team that wasn't a playoff team is Atlanta, and they play them twice in the last 6 games. So basically, Tulsa has 6 playoff teams at the back end of their schedule. We're just very quickly kind of going to go around the horn on these last 4 teams. Marcus, your thoughts on the Desperados schedule here with the bye the last week of the season?
I think it's pretty stacked against them in the second half of the season. And like I said earlier in my analysis of my team, I think the Southern Conference is going to be one of the toughest conferences this year. And I don't think their schedule for Tulsa is doing them any favors in this situation.
All right, 3 teams to go. How about Chicago? The Chicago Wildcats looking to bounce back. They had a rough season last year. Their bye's in week 2, and their schedule is fairly balanced. They only have one time where they go back-to-back road games. It's at Carolina and at St. Louis, 2 teams that were towards the bottom of the Eastern Conference last year. In St. Louis's case, the Central. They finish at home against Queen City. Jack, Chicago's schedule, where's the meat of it?
Well, I think the real meat of it right there is, I would say I guess more like games 5 through 7 or so. You know, you got Queen City, you got Indianapolis, and then you got at Baltimore. I think that's really going to be where Chicago really kind of proves their worth. You're taking on Queen City, which, you know, taking on Queen City whenever is always a fun time, as they say. So they're taking on Indy, who they've already beaten twice. So, you know, that's going to be a very interesting game to see if Indy can win that battle of the double eyes. And then, of course, you know, at Baltimore, it's a classic matchup. You know, you got Shan and TJ, who've been in the league for a very long time. I expect that to be a very good as well.
All right, here's 2 teams to go. Houston Hyenas over to Max Jackson. Houston also not any too terribly significant road trips at Tulsa, at Dallas back-to-back, but they start at Queen City. The Southern Conference is tough, and getting Queen City and Mexico City out of conference is no easy picnic either.
Right. I think Houston made the playoffs last season. I think they have kept a lot of talent. I think they figured out how to get Warren Murray involved in every game. So I think you're going to see, looking at the schedule, I don't know, I think they do it again. I don't think they're in a different conference, but I don't see anything that frightens me with this schedule at all. I think they might have to worry about Tulsa, but still, everybody's worried about Tallahassee, but if you get past the front 4, so I just don't see anything. I think they go to the playoffs again with this schedule.
Last but not least, the Mexico City Aztecs. Chris Curtis will lead the analysis. The bye's in week 3, and Mexico City ends the season at Vegas. Their 2 road games stacked is at San Francisco and at Houston. One of those at a Western Conference opponent that is expected to be on the lesser end just based off of last year and losing Max Jackson, and who obviously helped turn that team around. And then you've got the Houston Hyenas, who obviously a very good team, but it's cross-conference, so the game is not necessarily as big for Mexico City. Houston, Alaska, Vancouver, Sioux Falls there in that little end gap. Curtis, is that what you're looking at, or somewhere else?
That's exactly what I'm looking at, actually. That's what I was going to bring up, is they have 4 very winnable games at the back 4 of their schedule. And as long as they don't hit any stumbles, there's no reason why they can't, at that point, waltz into the playoffs. This is a playoff team. There's no reason why you should think anything different unless they show us something different. But this is another team that's going to be there when the dust settles. It's just a matter of how far they get in the postseason games.
And that's where Ray Bentley got hot last year, too, as well. So that's interesting for Mexico City.
He had a bit of a shaky start.
Yeah, he did. Well, hey, before we go tonight, just a shout-out to everybody that cheered some bits tonight. Kappa Jones with 1,200. I know that I'm taking just a tiny bit of time here, but LX Clinton had a couple hundred come through, 300 from B Funked, 1,200 from Mr. Gutty 117, 50 from Oofish 87. Fry from New Jersey, and San Fran Love Boys. So shout out to him for the bits, and unfortunately, that's all the Twitch chat goes up to. I know that there were some others tonight. Sketch BL with 1,200, Console Pit with 1,200, Scorpio King with 1,200 as well. Here on the top of the leaderboards, Enti Hund with 1,200, Shacker 3, Mr. Gutty, Kappa Jones, Yemish 100K, Plague 7, and the Eruptratan up at the top of the list. So we appreciate all the love, all the cheers. 15 from Oofish, 35 from PB and Jotter, and many, many more to come. So we appreciate all of you being here tonight for the SFL schedule release show. It was certainly had a fun time. Last words first from Marcus.
I'm just super excited to be here. I came here during the day before the championship game, so I got to see Tallahassee take on Alaska as my very first game. I've stuck it out through the draft as all the other rookies have. I am so excited and honored to be able to be here and a part of the league. So thank you guys for having me.
100 from R. Cochran. Shout out Ron. Jack Brown. Final thoughts.
Yeah, I'm absolutely hyped for the season. And one quick request about SFL Blitz. Can we please get a band together of the league staff and do a cover version of Ballroom Blitz, but about the SFL Blitz, please?
Think that can be arranged. We're already calling everybody the Crabs, so
Well, we got the Mexico City Crabs and the Alaska Crabs on the screen.
It's going to be a great crustacean matchup there, opening night. Max Jackson, final words.
I think the best hype thing about week 1 is that it's going to be at the SFL convention. You think that, that's a great audience, a great thing that everybody should try to come down to. That's what I'm going to promote right now, is that everybody make the chance, if you can, to go down there and meet the owners of a lot of teams, meet the staff. And that's going to be a great atmosphere to watch that first week of games.
Best of all, meet Cam. He's a pretty cool dude. Just kind of putting that out there.
Try to play me in basketball and see how that goes for you.
I'm only 5'6".
Curtis, final words tonight.
It's going to be fun. You got the convention, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, 13th through the 15th, and it's just going to start off another landmark season in SFL. Growth is abound in this league. I've been here since season 9. From season 9 to season 10 was a huge jump. From season 10 to season 11 looks like it's going to be the same. A lot of new stuff. We got the blitz coming. We got the player progressions getting fine-tuned and refined and all that sort of thing. It's a lot of fun to be had. Get your friends, neighbors, your dog involved. This community is growing by the day, and it's fun to watch. So let's all have a very, very awesome season 11, and I'm looking forward to it.
Sonic 0002, Suicide King, I see you. From all of us at the SFL Network, thank you all for being here. Thank you all for showing the love and support. I am Commissioner Cameron Irvine. Have a good night.
Good job.